cards you would look at cutting if you wanted to like beef out some of the other options in the deck.
Also, that was variant D from Bozzzton because that had all of the above, and to make room for it, there's no Kazakus in the deck, which is making room for that one.
I kind of glossed over that, yeah, my bad.
Yeah, so that has, because normally when Foxy Fraud comes in, it's one Thief, or in Bly's case, one Brain Freeze, but Bozzzton has all of those. He's just cutting the Kazakus instead to make room for that one Foxy Fraud, which is another pretty creative way of going at it. But it's been a while, I think, since we've had a good old-fashioned rogue mirror. We did see one a little bit earlier on, which was very, very tempo focused and came down to the last scrappy few resources. But this time around, this one might just be a little bit more explosive because both players have the juice. Bly's certainly a little bit more so, because I think you'll take the 1-to-1 split of Octobot to contact than having double contact built up in hand and no Octobot.
Yeah, I agree. Both players, like you said, though, doing pretty okay. The Secret Passage, although doesn't look like a great card, it is just good to cover some of those earlier turns sometimes, even if it's not used, or even if you do see it used quite often in the late game to like just dump some cards out the deck. It can be good just to buy over those turns in the early game because you don't necessarily want to be playing things on turn 1, 2, 3, 4 as Rogue. You really start to pump in those good turns at about turn 5.
Bly's Grimaces did not want to see the Cult Neophyte come down that turn because it interrupted his perfect on-curve play of Shroud of Concealment. I'm sure if there was no Neophyte, Bly's would have snapped the Shroud that turn and then looked probably at Octobot and Gordon on the following turn to discount the whole hand, and then we might have already been in field contact territory the turn after that. That single Neophyte from Bozzzton has diverted Bly's so far from that plan that it might even be 2 whole turns that it's been slowed down the overall game plan on that side. Cult Neophyte is just such a good card in the meta right now.
Don't play it against Tamsin Warlock. Bozzzton's hand is starting to get worse. I spoke about the benefits of a Secret Passage, but you don't necessarily want 2 this early in the game. 1 is manageable, second one, way too much.
Too quiet.
I'm going to coin out Orc Merchant to kill the Orc Merchant, I guess. Makes sense.
That's an upgrade. Probably.
And looks like he's going to step the contact.
Oh, okay.
Joke's on you. Bly's couldn't kill it anyway. Should have just left it on the board.
Missed value there. But he does pick up Shroud, which is something that will help him recover from this slightly ropey hand now.
Yep, that's a big deal. You mentioned earlier about how we've had quite a pedestrian day in terms of play speed. We've had the Yarla and Bunny Hopper dyad, right, to kick off the day, which is kind of the old school, slow, grindy play style of European GM. You mentioned how this one would probably pick it up. I think there's a real tug of war, actually, because Bozzzton is yet another one of the famously slowest players that we have in European GM, whereas Bly's wants to snap everything as quickly as possible and can get visibly frustrated when he is being made to wait on the other side. And I think you are seeing the beginnings, the seeds being planted of that dynamic already. Bozzzton will not be sped up. We have seen it when certain other players get sucked into playing at their opponent's speed. Bozzzton will absolutely not do that. Nothing speeds Bozzzton up. Even the rope being 1 second away from burning out does not speed Bozzzton up.
Nothing will speed him up.
Yes.
Xbyzes is taking the tempo approach. I was going to ask, but we were talking about Bozzzton, so it's fine. Just if there was a value or an automatic response of Xbyzes going for the 1-mana golem, just to do the rogue things, right, that you do want to do. Cheap card, battle cry, gets things done. But Xbyzes did go for a more tempo approach with the 5-drop version.
I think it was worth it there as well, because I think at that point, some kind of impactful summon a copy golem could have just been straight up game winning, just in terms of the amount of immediate tempo he would have got. I do kind of like going for 5s in this matchup. I like fighting for tempo in this matchup, honestly. I think it's another one of those things where sometimes in mirror matchups, both decks are forced to divert from their primary game plan because they're both trying to do the same thing, right? We've talked about it in the Shadow Priest matchup. Both decks are very aggressive, so they kind of cancel each other out and they have to play quite controlly and fight for board. Even though in the Rogue matchup, generally they're a combo deck that aren't very good at playing for tempo against other decks. When it comes to playing against each other, they're actually quite good at doing that, and they can make annoying boards over and over again that the other side has to deal with. So I think doing that in the Rogue mirror is quite effective in a lot of positions. We certainly saw that pan out the last time that we saw the Rogue mirror on broadcast a little bit earlier today, I believe it was. May have been yesterday. It's starting to blur together. I'm not going to lie. The lineups are all very similar.
Bozzzton gonna choose to equip the dagger. I don't really think he was ever considering just throwing Garrote in there, although you mentioned a lot of the time in the mirror you play for tempo. It doesn't mean you just throw away Garrotes without spell damage or without some kind of plan, unless you are really going for a long shot to win an unwinnable game.
There's a good chunk of Shroud value available, just in terms of being able to stick a minion and being able to go face. Primordial Studies does support the core game plan. It's a nice little benefit of One Thief in this deck is how many of the mage spells actually do have crossover with the game plan of what you're trying to do. Actually, you can get spell damage, you can get card draw, you can get ignite, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad, depending on what exactly your late game scenario is, whether you want that extra card in the deck or not. There's a lot of things that you can just kind of add to proceedings that really support this this burst damage late game OTK style that Rogue has.
Yeah, good old Fireball. There's never a time when Fireball's not relevant.
True.
In any matchup, any health total.
Just trying to make that statement as definitive as you possibly could, Raven. I respect it.
Ooh, 2 mana passage into the Neophyte. Can't feel great here from Bozzzton. Zone 1 Thief.
Choose soon.
Gets his own Primordial Studies.
Is it studies, though? I imagine it is.
It's better on average than just a flat cram session, right? Or taking cram session and waiting for the turn where you can spell damage. I think that's a bit too adventurous for my taste.
Yep. No, largely agree. Decent hand management this time around as well, finishing up on the 9 cards. Still has both field contacts sat in hand. This one is going to get off to the races pretty darn quick. xBlyzes is finding his additional turn here. What did he start this turn with? Did he start the turn with Prep Shroud? Assuming so.
Yeah, he did.
Fine. It's the 3 cards. Okay.
Too quiet.
Also gets a stealthed contact in play, which is a very big deal. Now, where, if anywhere, is this Shadow Step going? Okay, he's choosing to Shadow Step Octobot here as well, deciding he wants additional mana for the following turn. 10 cards left remaining after the draw, 0 mana Secret Passage, and an additional 1 mana Field Contact. This actually could be... Get your Rogue spotting books out, because this could be an appearance of the rarely sighted, lesser spotted double Field Contact lethal on the following turn. If this first contact appears, he then has a second 1 mana Field Contact available in hand.
And most things are doable with 2 field contacts, but 10 cards after the draw, very doable with a 1 mana contact and 2 of them.
You're paying.
The problem card for XBlyzes next turn, if he gets there, would be the second Garrote.
Right.
Give me that. Not what I want.
But yes, certainly Bozzzton is deciding that this turn is go time for him. Still has 3 mana available, which is not enough based on my eyeballing of the situation. So I very much agree with this Octobot play. Try and cheat a bunch more mana here.
Initiating overdrive.
Was it me? Choose soon.
Yeah, this hasn't really panned out as I imagine Bozzzton wanted it to. Checking out the cards left in the deck now. Double Garrote. Double Prep in there as well as one of the spell damage Aug Merchants. Okay, Blyze, lock in the quickest turn you've ever played.
Yes! Let's go!
Doing it!
Can cheat the Brain Freeze with the Foxy Fraud. I think this is one of the reasons why I personally still like Foxy Fraud a ton, even though most people don't, is that, you know, people will very often try and block turns like this with Cult Neophyte, and Foxy Fraud just allows you that one turn to cheat it if you would really like to.
Wasn't me!
Blyze already probably picking his deck for game 2, the speed at which he's going.
He has everything he needs, right? So now burning cards no longer matters at this point.
Yeah.
It's fine, there's only 2 cards left in his deck anyway.
Now
So
zero.
spell damage, garrote, throw it all out there. Boom! Did you think this guy was mortal? Did you think he was fallible? Do you think he was going to screw up even on double field contact? No, absolutely not. Blyze just gets there.
You're paying for my
What a game, what a plan. He did get the stealth field contact, of course, which was a huge deal. But just insta locking in the turn. He would have... The best thing is as well, at this point, we'd normally be like, so he probably thought about it during Bozzzton's turn and worked out that it was exactly possible. Honestly, with Blyze, I imagine he just knew on the turn before he set it up that he could just get through it all in almost all circumstances. So, great win for him there in game number 1 in the Rogue Mirror. And pretty just impressive confidence with the combo as well, because although we can say all our Grandmasters are top-level players, they should be confident with combo turns like the Rogue. They're simply not. We have seen it over the past few weeks across all regions that there are things to trip players up. There's even just maybe a lack of confidence in those specific turns, which slows them down, which then actually causes issues in some instances. We've seen missed lethals, we've seen so on, but Blyze locked in double field contact, drew what he needed to draw, played what he needed to play, and he won the game.
Yes, indeed. He has made a little bit of a habit recently of if he's watching GM and he sees someone else throwing on a Rogue game, he'll tweet out what they should have done, just kind of into the ether, not even really at anyone in particular. He just tweets out what the line was and calls it a day. So, you know, obviously if you're going to do that, you have to be able to back it up by seeing the lines and executing the lines yourself when you get into that position, which he absolutely did do, and that's a great way to kick off the series for Blyze, going out to a 1-0 lead in a crucial mirror match.
And speaking of mirror matches, we're going to be having another one on our hands, Sottle. It's going to be the Priest mirror match coming right up. So, again, we've seen this mirror match a lot. Guess what? We've seen a lot of these matchups a lot because it's all the players are bringing. And it will just be that super hard-fought fight for the board in the early game. And honestly, once you lose control of the board, you don't really get it back. I think this matchup, along with Old Zoo, of course, reminds me the most of, do you remember the Aggro Shaman Dreamhack? Where it was LHS and there was Aggro Shaman and everyone just queued it first, and whoever won the mirror just probably won the series. It very much feels like a very similar matchup to that, where it was a deck we're used to seeing, you know, Lava Burst flying for lethal, Doomhammer and so on, but it really in the mirror came down to just extremely scrappy on-board fights.
Yeah, instead of Lava Burst being thrown at face, they're being thrown at the opponent's 3-2 Wind Fury mech, so it doesn't absolutely murder you the next turn.
Like it did to Firebat that one time.
Oh, yeah, was it Firebat Stan Sifka? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and it was like turn 3, right? Turn 3 lethal?
It was because we had 1 mana Rockbiter back then, so we were just like able to load up everything onto a single thing, yeah. Nowadays, you just play Void Touch Attendant and a Lucia, and that's lethal on turn 3. It's pretty common, honestly, not even that noteworthy.
Yeah, I don't know what everyone's too bothered about. This was happening years ago. To check out the list, of course, it is good. I didn't look at every single card just now, but I'm pretty sure it's an identical matchup. So it's just all going to be down to who can get hold of the board early. But generally speaking, Sottle, what are just, if you could pick like 2 cards to be in the mulligan, what are they going to be here?
Going first, give me the Homunculus all day, every day. Going first on the play, dropping the 2/5 taunt, huge. On coin, if I can literally take 2 cards on coin, I'll take Gandling and a 0 drop. I think in most situations. But I think it does vary a lot based on going first or second. Outside of that, if you want like a generic answer, Tour Guide, I think is probably the best generic good card that you can have in any situation in this mirror.
Okay, well, one player has one of each so far.
Yeah, not bad.
The really weird thing here is I imagine Bozzzton throws Raised Dead, although you can make certain plans for it in the early game. If your first minion's going to be Homunculus, Raised Dead might be a little bit of a while away, right, to warrant actually keeping it if you're on the play.
Yeah, I think so, because of the rest of the hand right now. Like, early Raised Dead usually only comes into play when you're playing Guardian Orc Merchant Tour Guide, when that's your start, right? Fragile minions with high impact battle cries that you can then recycle very quickly with Raised Dead. Whereas, like, Bozzzton just has the stats right now, right? So he's not going to be... He's going to be hoping these minions live, stick around, and push damage. He doesn't want them to die and bringing them back with Raised Dead.
Yep. Statsman versus the man with a plan, as Xbylyzes has that Ganling coin, just waiting for something to combo with it. In the vein of a 0-cost 1-1. It looks like one of the players might just have a in-game connection issue, so we'll see what's going to happen there. Both players are moving on camera, though, so I imagine it's more of a less of an internet issue and maybe a client issue at this point. We'll get that sorted as quickly as possible. But already, one player has a Ganling, or at least most of a Ganling plan. There's plenty of time to draw something on coin. And Bozzzton does have that early stat, so as we get back into it, I'm excited to see how this one pans out.
Yeah, this was a problem that plagued APAC, unfortunately, but we have been informed that it is potentially a client-side problem, which means if we do run into it multiple times, it's not on the players' backs to be solving that problem or to be penalised for it. So hopefully we are through most of it and we can just get on with this series. It'd be a shame if we suddenly got plagued by it just right at the end of our broadcast. But still, there is freshmen aplenty on this opening. 1-4s everywhere, but xBlyzes is going to be able to upgrade into the 1-6, the mythical 1-6.
The face of ultimate terror there, drawn into xBlyzes' hand, the Murloc. You laugh, but it's not something Bozzzton's going to want to see very soon. Bozzzton just goes Void Touch Deceptor with an attack to face, of course. Even though he doesn't really interact with xBlyzes' board, he is extremely wide. Could value the hero power instead, just to take down the Kulturin.
Alternatively, send it.
Like I said, I think this would be my initial play, because although you're not fighting for the board strictly in the strict sense, you are going very wide. But there's Raised Dead.
I don't think we've talked about it a lot, but I don't think we've actually seen this interaction happen yet in Europe. We've seen it a couple of times happen in Americas, where they've been playing the deck for a little bit longer. But that Murloc did die just now, which means it went into the pool for the Raised Dead.
Hey, look at him; he's all grown up. Next one comes down, and although it looks on the surface like a pretty low-value Raised Dead for 1-0 mana 1-1, it's actually an additional 4-4.
Yeah, I mean, if he said he drew a 0 mana 4-4 that turn, like 0 mana 4-4, deal 3 damage to your own hero, yeah, I'd play that card in like every deck ever. What do you mean?
I could have drawn 2 of them later.
I must consider.
And these are the openings. They're nigh impossible to come back from. The minions are just too big. And it's the double threat, right? The 4-4s are a problem, high trading value, or a lot of damage to face, depending on how good the game's going for one of the players. But also the Ganling itself, every single turn Xbylyzes is going to draw a card and effectively draw a 4-4 for cheap every single turn if you don't kill Ganling. So you can't do everything. So Bozzzton has to make decisions as to what he even wants to attempt to do this turn.
Alternatively, just send it.
Ace, what?
I mean,
Raised Dead, Void Touch, go.
It's interesting. Like, there is obviously there's a break point where you've done too much damage to yourself, leaving up all the 4-4s on the other side.
Just go.
I mean, alternatively,
Okay.
you just send it.
I only like this play. Is it? Oh no!
Wait.
Man.
Wait.
Didn't hero power.
Wait.
Oh.
He did not hero power.
Yeah. It's always the mouse's fault.
Yeah, I know, 100%.
Oh, it's a lot of damage.
Oh.
4 damage.
Literal infinity. Hang on. So
7.
you need to do 2 damage to the 2/5. And you can hero power it. But even hero powering it is
not
inefficient in
right.
terms of pushing damage. That's 7, 14. Counting this is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
20. No, yeah, it was never.
Yeah. Just clear the board up. I think he doesn't even play the attendant, right?
Agreed.
Clear as much of the board as possible. He can use this Orc Merchant to kill off an additional minion for that 1 damage. Now he just needs to... Oh, Blyze is making the decision. Do I bot face with this 2/2, push 1 extra, and then trade into the Void?
That's an upgrade. Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. I think as long as he kills the Void Touch and the majority of the minions, he's got to feel extremely confident.
Here for the tour?
What's that? 2, 4.
You have to read this one.
The reader.
Currently facing down 24, 26 from the hero power, yeah. So he can essentially afford to hero power face. But it doesn't really achieve anything, and it doesn't really achieve anything because he's 4 damage short of where he should be based on the ping not happening on the previous turn, and yeah, he's just going to have to give it up. And if that was, genuinely a mechanical error with the mouse or whatever, then sympathies, but track record would certainly seem to suggest otherwise when it comes to Bozzzton.
Yeah, it's a rough one, but again, it's just one of those things where decisions need to be made. I mean, I know a lot of people who who think the rope takes too long to kick in, so I think there should be an Uzdamu mode all the time. But in general, it feels bad when it happens, but the fact it happened is a problem that you need to look at, right? And as you mentioned, not the first time. If it was some kind of his mouse cut out or something, you are right, that just sucks. But again, I guess it happens. We are going to quickly move on into our game number 3. Blyze on track to tidy this last matchup in a very rapid fashion. Bozzzton still got a ways to go if he wants to take the series. It's going to be Queen Priest again, and again against Warlock. This is a very tough matchup, even if we just judged it from today alone, Sutton.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've certainly seen it going that way. And again, I think it's a little bit of refinement in the lists, a little bit of refinement in the play when it comes to the Priest of just how to be as annoying as possible against handlock, because it used to be the way that, yeah, sure, sometimes the boards got made early by the Priest and then they stuck and then the game was won. But it used to also be that if the Warlock drew Soul Rend, then the game just kind of ended because no one was really playing around it as effectively as they can. Now, with the health buffs being rationed better, with the Divine Shields being used better, with Cult Neophyte being used better, with Raise Dead being used better, to get additional Divine Shields or health buffs or Cult Neophytes, the Priests are showing a greater ability to play around those dangerous outs from the Warlock. And we've seen literally that interaction happen on multiple occasions, right? Where Psycho had it, perfect setup, Soul Rend me if you want, I have lethal on board. And we've seen situations where it wasn't there, but the setup was still there, where it had all bases covered. If they draw Soul Rend this turn, doesn't matter, I have lethal through Soul Rend anyway. We've seen that on multiple occasions, and I think, that refinement and that perfection of the craft with this deck has been a big reason why this matchup has crept more and more in favor of the Priest as time has gone on.
And even after saying all that, do you think Soul Rend is still a keep here for Blyze? Wait, he hasn't mulliganed yet, or did I miss it?
What on earth just happened? The Demon Seed just teleported to the other side of the hand.
That's why I'm like, has he mulliganed yet? Now I thought I just looked away. Okay, so apologies. I don't know what happened. I was looking at Bozzzton's hand, moved up to Blyze, thought he'd already thought he hadn't mulliganed yet, and then things got weird.
It wasn't just you. That was very weird looking.
Either way, doesn't matter now. He does have that backfire and does have Soul Rend available. So although we talked about the ability for Priest to play around Soul Rend, it doesn't mean they can do it every single game, right? So it's still a potentially powerful card.
Yeah, I mean, in answer to your question before we got distracted by whatever that was, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Soul Rend, it's still a plan. And I think, if anything, having it in your opening hand allows you to have a clear and concise plan. Because if you don't have it in your opening hand, your plan gets a little bit torn, right? Because you want to play cards, you want to fight for tempo, you want to play your minions on curve, you want to play Drain Soul on curve, you want to play Touch on curve to deny threats from the opponent. But if you're doing that, you're not tapping. If you're not tapping, you're not drawing Soul Rend. If you're not playing Soul Rend, you're not clearing the board. If you just have Soul Rend in your opening hand, well, cool, we don't need to tap anymore, right? We can just get on with the game, fight for tempo as aggressively as we can, and know that you still have that Soul Rend to fall back on.
Hey, though, Bozzzton did get a hold of a Lucia as Neophyte for turn 2, so everything seems to be lining up okay. The only slight question is, I imagine it's not going to be an Lucia on 3 here. I don't think the damage is quite there for Bozzzton. And even if he does, he will see the Soul Rend in response. This looks a little bit better, Sol.
It does. It will all get rendered regardless, though.
Yep.
Which means because coin is available, right? And I think, honestly, that's what Blyze is praying for. I think Blyze does not want to get a Lucia this turn, which is a pretty clear indicator that you should Lucia him this turn.
The general rules of what was that from the Art of War? I can't remember, but it's like if your enemy wants something, stop them having it. Like that, it doesn't matter what it is, where it is.
Delete Mind Render Lucia, Sun Tzu.
Yes. He was ahead of his time. What can I say? I roll from Blyze.
Gets the news, the good news from his perspective that he made the right decision because he would have got coin rendered if he had not have done this.
I'm pretty sure Bozzzton is going to float the mana and not shuffle that restaurant vibe before Blyze. So yeah, good play.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
Actually not bad as the priest turns go, honestly. And by priest turns, I mean when you're not actually the natural priest.
Was this right? You could Torgai tap there, right? Because it was free. I believe he's on 3 out of 6 currently. So he would have tapped, taken 3 damage. And then, I guess it doesn't matter, right? You'd just be filling up a card for your opponent.
Yeah, you give him another card, yeah.
I just like thinking, like, is progressing quest ever relevant in that position that you want to spend mana on doing that? But I just don't think it is.
Bozzzton's going to go for the old Lucia. He's dead. And Blyze knows, as soon as that Lucia targets a minion,
yep,
you know what's coming.
Yep.
Again.
Yep.
Here for the tour?
One more time, so.
Yep.
Maybe they concede. Lucia shenanigans strike once again. And all only hold out hope. Alec is the savior we need for the future.
Please save us from this perpetual nightmare. What is happening? Why has this card been allowed for so long? We all told you it would get to this point eventually and you just ignored us, and now here we are.
We are looking at going to be going into a mirror match in the next game, and it is going to be a handlock mirror with a couple of differences in terms of the overall build there. I don't even want to see the replay. Cut the replay, everyone. Cut the replay. It's too much of Lucia. But yeah, we are going to go dive into a handlock mirror, and now things get a little bit more interesting because it means that Bozzzton still has his rogue and this handlock to try and beat up on the handlock left over for Blyze. So it becomes at least a little bit more doable, especially when, at least for me, Sol, the hardest matchup by far is going to be this mirror match for Bozzzton, and then the rogue can a lot of the time feel a lot more comfortable.
It can, but I think that matchup is a little bit closer than it gets credit for as well, particularly if the handlock is being piloted well. We have seen, of course, some dead draws from the rogue where the deck just falls apart against handlock because it can't deal with the threats, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I think a lot of the time, as long as you get a decent stack of card draw at the top, you know, like early backfire in that matchup against rogue, you've described it very well, right? You can make that big board with multiple scavengers and giants, etc., all in the same turn, drop the neophyte, and you just win the game the next turn. They have to kill you, and they have to kill you through a cult neophyte that you've also played in the same turn as well. So I think, you know, Warlock does have a little bit of game in that matchup, but we'll get to that if and when we need to, because for now, we are seeing rod-on-rod action here as both players have the power play in the opening hand, but Bozzzton might just have the ability to go next level because he has the destruction as well.
Oh, backup. Yeah, it's a big deal, right? Like I said, I have been playing this this deck a fair amount over the last couple of days, and the Viper has surprised me. Even if it's only for the mirrors, the being able to eat the weapon is such a big deal because it's like you're only ever scared of your opponent having rod into backfire, right? Like that is the fear number one in this mirror match, and being able to just stop that happening is so big.
Lies gives the nod.
Again.
Yep. He was prepared for this scenario. He's going to weave in the tap this turn, though. Again, mana efficiency. Doesn't necessarily want to float that mana on the Mithril Rod. He can just play that quite happily next turn now alongside the tap. Just making sure this is all getting fit in. Whereas Bozzzton, with the luxury of the coin, can play his own rod one turn early, get that coin out, get that life tap in. Does not want to be missing a tap on any given turn. Make sure you are powering through that deck as quickly as possible. And in the meantime, underrated factor of the spider tank that got played is that it's a spider tank that is currently attacking his opponent.
Would you believe it? Yeah, we need a player on backfire here. These taps are even more important than usual with both players having rod equipped, right? Like with backfire, it's not normally too bad because your natural draw plus a backfire gets the job done for one. I'm just waiting for a player to like drain Soul Coil in this scenario.
Ends up going Neophyte instead. Both players are in that position where they do have to think about getting cards out of hand before they start getting cards back into hand right now, though.
Still always looking for the backfire to progress the game plan, like I said. And like, well, like you said, I said earlier, a lot of this Warlock game plan with the evolution it's at now is mass card draw and then one huge turn, or maybe even two like back-to-back big turns to be able to win the game. And at the moment, Blight is just that little bit, like half step ahead in terms of card draw. Wait, what's his quest on?
Bozzzton, sorry?
Yeah.
Not sure.
Is he potentially like one-off lethal here? Oh no, 0 out of 7, okay. The type of lethals I really like Battle Master this board and then just proc a quest for deal 3 to finish the game.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit ambitious because he doesn't really have the mana to be doing that anyway, even if he did get to the quest, right? Because even with Raised Dead doesn't currently have a dead minion to be able to be played.
And he's nowhere near the 7, of course, but it's those like little lethal that randomly pops up sometimes that are like cheeky that I actually really like. And I think really playing Battle Master for these 3 attack minions.
I think it does come up fairly often as well because I think it's one of the things that is fairly abusable against Warlock is that they only really have one card in their entire deck that's reach, right, which is the Battle Master. So normally you're like, oh, I'm alive at 1, cool, and you just forget to factor in that the quest deals 3 damage to you sometimes, so it does actually come up. Interesting use of the Tamsin. Again, it's another cute Tamsin interaction. Less discussed than the one with the Cold Neophyte where you just get to duplicate 1-mana spells that keep coming out over and over again. But just being able to duplicate Raised Dead because it actually gets raised up to the point where it is a duplicatable spell from Tamsin. However, I will say having access to the Tamsin is a partial advantage for Bozzzton that can be used for a variety of purposes, right? It can be used for Soul Rend to clear big boards. It can be used for, you know, late game healing or late game damage after the Tamsin when it comes out as well. And that is a big resource that is now gone from Bozzzton's deck, replaced with a Raised Dead now.
Yeah, and it makes the makes this turn feel much more comfortable for xBlyzes, right? Because he knows now that double Soul Rend is not generally going to be the case, or at least it's not going to be the case as often, because now he just knows for a fact Tamsin's gone. It's basically like -1 Soul Rend.
Not really, though, right? Because you saw what they did with the Tamsin, which was get another Raised Dead back. So now they could Raise Dead to get the Tamsin back, to then play the Tamsin, play the Soul Rend, 0 mana Soul Rend, etc., etc. It's possible.
Possible, but not reliable.
No.
Drain Soul, Drain Soul. Soul Rend is going to be the order here. Important to note that Bozzzton chose to burn the 2 cards in that instance. He, of course, could have done it the other way around, right? But obviously he wants to get to 10 cards or less to get these scavengers on for cheap.
Absolutely. Now the Raised Dead for xBlyzes hits 1 giant. Sure, he'll take that in this scenario. And that is quest completion this turn. Oh! That's Tammy 2 plus potentially another giant coming down here, and he hits it. And you see the wince from Bozzzton. This is amplified by the fact that the second Soul Rend was burned by the first, so his ability to actually be able to clear this up is quite limited.
You get accustomed to the smell.
It's
the second scavenger off the draw! Illegal! Alert all relevant authorities, Raven. This turn was strictly illegal.
Yeah, and I really like that he went for the draw over the Tamsin that turn, because his outs are way better. He could have bristlebacked if he really needed to for the heal as well, if he wasn't feeling confident to get an extra 3/3 on board. If all goes wrong, he does actually have just raw double Soul Rend to defend. And then he can play his Tamsin after the fact. He's going to be just checking on xBlyzes, his last card. Still has 2 backfires available. And after Tamsin, or as Subtle would like to say, in a post-Tamsin world. That's a really big, important factor.
We're going to reach the new meta now where we just both accuse each other of saying that all the time, but never actually say it ourselves.
I'm fairly confident you have said it more than me at this point.
Absolutely untrue. Patently untrue. You said it for months before I even pointed it out the first time.
Doesn't count months ago, it's only about the now.
What does that even mean?
This week.
Oh, okay. Meanwhile, Bozzzton has had a equally impressive turn coming back the other way, but the big problem is that xBlyzes got to do it first, so xBlyzes has consolidated attacking minions, which means that Soul Rend can now leverage through this.
How much damage is this? 1220? No, because he can actually punch through a lot of this and still have all 3 minions attack.
Yes.
It is only 20. So can he start with a tap here?
Well, I think he's going to Drain Soul, Soul Rend, Bristleback, right? So there's not enough mana. Actually, there is still enough mana to fit in with that. But I think he's going to do it this way to deliberately delete as many cards as he possibly can, right? He's deliberately killing his own 3/3 here just to push himself into fatigue. Now he's lining up with the Tamsin on the following turn. Goes into 10 mana, and now he has Tamsin tap backfire.
Wait, does he still have Battlemaster in his Battlemaster his last card?
Is that what he was reacting to? No, it's back. I mean, even better. Okay, even better.
Like I said before, he didn't have he had the 2 backfires still left, and the fact that that was the 1 card he's got left is so big. I mean, unless Bozzzton heals a lot here, he is just Omega dead next turn.
Yeah, no Neophyte either off the Raised Dead, which could have limited the amount of card draw, would have meant that tap and backfire could not be played at the same time. But
even just backfire kills him anyway, right?
Yep.
As in, xBlyzes backfire, apologies. Yeah.
Yep.
That's some healing, but he can clear the board. Can he raise dead? He's played a bristleback, right?
Yes.
But does he raise dead for a bristleback? So right, I've got my Tams in now. Let's go. 2 health, but still, let's go.
More bones to gnaw on.
Gonna clear up and hope it's enough, but it's definitely not.
Nowhere close to resist this amount of damage that can come through here from xBlyzes. xBlyzes gives the nod, xBlyzes gives the smile. That was an incredibly rapid quest completion from the Frenchman in this series, and he is going to pick up a big victory, pushing himself further towards playoff security, whereas Bozzzton fails to do what we described, right, which was hitch his wagon to J4 and follow him through to that semi-final. So that means a little bit of a gap might be opening up between 2 of those players down towards the bottom of proceedings, fighting for relegation. And xBlyzes, sir, thank you for following instructions. Players were specifically notified not to disconnect immediately so that that moment there could be shared. And you see there xBlyzes with a slightly impatient look on his face, complying. So thank you, Brian. We appreciate you.
2, 1.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, not so much a close game because of the way we could see it pan out, of course, but still a very tricky matchup to get right. We did see weapon destruction, but I think xBlyzes is like insta-second rod. Or not, he didn't play it instantly, but had access to it instantly was a big deal there.
Raven, that's Onsta and Onstantly, I think.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Wish you'd Onsta shut up. But xBlyzes ended up taking the victory overall. Looked very comfortable indeed. Although 14 health does not sound comfortable, it kind of is at that point in the game. We see our top 4 there. Warlock versus Bunny Hopper. J4 versus xBlyzes for our semi-finals tomorrow. And just to give you some sort of heads up as to what this means, we'll get much sort of finished standings obviously once tomorrow is done. But Bunny Hopper came into this week on 9 points, joint with RDU and Psycho. So that's going to be really good. He's ahead of both of those players, which is a good start. He obviously beat Psycho in his previous match. xBlyzes came in 6th with 8 points on his own, but just 1 point below RDU, and the fact that RDU's not been around this week means